And we're continuing with the 6th chapter of Silver on the Tree. They have come to the Bearded Lake. Will definitely feels that something is up there, although nobody else does. But Jane definitely feels like she is being attacked, but she can't quite tell if it's an attack for the dark or basically what, puberty is already doing to her, because she's always kind of in a bad mood right now. But let's find out what happens. A flash of orange caught her eye through a gap in the hilly skyline. The noisy family was leaving, the mother dragging one rebellious child crossly by the arm. They disappeared behind the slope, heading for the path. But Jane did not go back to the others. She wandered aimlessly, still on her own, through the heather and the wet grass, until suddenly the wind was cold on her face again, and she found she was back at the Bearded Lake. From behind she heard a faint laugh and a call from Barney. And then the same call again, a summons for the echo. She stood, looking bleakly out over the weed-shrouded water, at the distant valley beyond. The wind sang in her ears. The cloud of the heavy gray sky was so low now that it blew ragged over the hilltop in white tails and tatters of mist, whirling down to the lake, curling, blowing away into the valley. The whole world seemed gray, as if all color had drained from the summer grass. In an eddy of the wind that brought a sudden stillness after it, Jane heard Simon's voice faintly behind her, a sudden snatch of sound. "Thou earth, thou speak!" And very faintly indeed, perhaps only imagining she heard the echo. "Speak, speak." Then some words came in another voice, clear and strange, and she knew that it was Bran calling in Welsh. And again the echo came faintly back, bringing the words to her again, familiar even while meaningless. The wind flurried, the mist blew in a ragged shroud over the far side of the lake, hiding the happy valley. And on the echo of Bran's call, as if following a cue, a third voice came singing so high and sweet and unearthly that Jane stood without breathing, caught out of movement, feeling every stilled muscle, and yet as totally transported as if she had no body at all. She knew it was Will. She could not remember if she had ever heard him sing before. She could not even think or do anything but hear. The voice soared up on the wind from behind the hill, distant and clear, in a strange, lovely line of melody, and with it, and behind it, very faint, in a following descent, came the echo of the song, a ghostly second voice, twinning with the first. It was as if the mountains were singing, and as Jane gazed unseeing at the clouds blowing low over the lake, someone came. Somewhere in the shifting grayness a patch of color began faintly to glow, red and pink and blue merging into one another too fast for the eye to follow. Glimmering soft and warm on the cold mountain, it held Jane's gaze as hypnotically as a flame. Then gradually it began to focus itself. Jane blinked in disbelief as she realized that a form was taking shape around it. Not a definite, clear shape, but a suggestion, a hint of what might be seen with the right eyes. The brightness grew more intense until suddenly it was all contained in a glowing rose-colored stone set into a ring, and the ring on the finger of a slender figure standing before her, leaning a little as if resting on a stick. There was at first such brightness around the figure that Jane could not look directly at it. Instead, her eyes flickered down to the ground on which it stood, only to realize with a shock that no ground was there. The figure was floating before her. An isolated fragment of whatever world lay beyond the grayness. It was the delicate form of an old lady she saw now, wearing a long, light-colored robe. The face was fine-boned, kindly yet arrogant, with clear blue eyes that shone strangely young in the old, cobweb-lined face. Jane had forgotten the others, forgotten the mountain and the rain, forgotten everything but the face that watched her now. Gently smiled, but still the old lady did not speak. Jane said huskily, "You are the lady, Will's lady." The lady inclined her head a slow, graceful nod. "And since you can see that much, I may speak to you, Jane Drew. It was intended from the beginning that you should carry the lost message." "Message?" Jane's voice came out in a whisper. Some things there are that may be commuted only between like and like. The sweet, soft voice said from the mist, It is the pattern of a child's game of dominoes. For you and I are much the same. Jane, Jana, Juno, Jane, in clear ways that separate us from all others concerned in this quest. And you and Will are alike in your youth and your vigor, neither of which I share. The voice grew fainter, as if with a great weariness, then rallied, and the light glowed more brightly from the rose-colored ring on the lady's hand. She drew herself upright, and her robe shone clear white now, bright as a moon over the gray lake. Jane, she said. Madam? Jane said at once. Without any self-consciousness, she bowed her head and dipped one knee, almost to kneeling, oblivious of her jeans and anorak, as if she were dropping a deep curtsy in respect out of another age. The lady said clearly, You must tell them that they must go to the lost land. In the moment when it shall show itself between the land and the sea, and a white bone will prevent them, and a flying may-tree will save them, and only the horn can stop the wheel. And in the glass tower among the 7 trees, they will find the crystal sword of the light. Her voice wavered, ending in a gasp, as if clutching for some last strength. Jane said, struggling to hold the words, struggling to hold her image of the lady, In the glass tower, among the 7 trees, and a white bone will prevent them, and a flying may-tree save them, and only the horn will stop the wheel. Remember, the lady said. Her white form was beginning to fade, and the glow dying in the rose of the ring. The voice grew softer, softer. Remember, my daughter, and be brave, Jane. Be brave. Brave. The sound died and the wind whirled. Jane stared desperately out into the gray mist, searching to see the clear blue eyes and the old lined face, as if only they could fix the words in her memory. But she was alone among the dark hills and the lake with the low clouds blowing, and in her ears only the wind and the last imagined thread of a dying voice. And now, as if it had never left her consciousness from the first instant, there came instead the clear, high, echo-twined melody of Will's voice, and that seemed to her like the mountain singing. Suddenly the singing broke off. Will's voice flung through the air, a hoarse, urgent shout. Jane! Jane! The echo followed it. Jane! Jane! Like a whispered warning. In a quick instant, Jane swung round toward the voice, but saw only the green slope of the hill. She looked back at the lake and found that in the brief moment of her turning, such horror had arisen before her that panic engulfed her like ice-cold water. She tried to scream, and brought out only a strangled croak. Out of the water an immense neck rose, swaying before her, dripping, tipped by a small pointed head, open-mouthed, black-toothed. 2 horn-like antennae moved sluggishly to and fro on the head like the horns of a snail, a fringe like a mane between them, and ran down the whole length of the neck, bent to one side by the water that hung from it, dripping slimily into the lake. The neck rose higher and higher, endless. Gazing in motionless terror, Jane saw that it was everywhere, a dark green shot with a strange dull iridescence, except on the underside that faced her, a dead silvery white, like the belly of a fish. High over her head the creature towered, swayed, menacing. The air was filled with a stench of weed and marsh gas and decaying things. Jane's arms and legs would not move. She stood staring. The great serpent lunged to and fro toward her, nearer, nearer, blindly searching. Its mouth hung open. Slime dripped from the black jaws. It swung close to her, reeking dreadfully, and seemed to sense her. The head drew back to strike. Jane screamed and closed her eyes. And that is the end of chapter 6.